Welcome to the Better Together podcast. I'm your host, Kyla, and today, as you can see, I have a guest on. This is my mother. Say hello.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here.
And as you can tell, we're at a different location, and that's because I am back in Michigan visiting my family, and we're at my mom's house, and she is on our episode today. So before we get into the topic, I'm going to read my Journey to the Heart entry per usual, and then we will get into the topic. So this is called Believe in Life, Not Loss. Believing in life means we can trust in the nature and rhythm of life with all its constant change. We believe in transformation, change, and purpose. Believing in life means we're not in bondage to the past. No matter what we've done, what decisions we've made, we set ourselves free to trust ourselves now. We trust what we feel, we trust what we know, we trust what we think we need to do next. Believing in life means we trust that the lessons we're learning are real. They're valuable and divinely ordained, even when learning a lesson means feeling pain. Believing in loss means we focus on the grief, on the pain, on the tragedy, on the inescapable reality of certain events. Believing in loss means we get fixated on what was taken from us, what we did wrong. We judge ourselves and our lives harshly. Believing in loss often means we stay stuck. We're afraid to let go of a person, place, or thing that's no longer right for us because we're afraid to lose anything more. Do you believe in loss or do you believe in life? Believing in life means it's okay to let go. We can trust where we've been, we trust where we're going, and we're right where we need to be now. Believe in life. So I chose that entry today because we are going to be talking about grief today, which is something, unfortunately, everybody has to deal with, but unfortunately something we have dealt with more than
our fair share.
Yeah, more than our fair share. So we're going to start off, I think, just by talking about our losses, and then we're not going to strictly keep it to death, but also, breakups and other friendships and other forms of grief that we experience outside of death. But for us, our biggest form of grief has been from the loss of my dad and the loss of my brother Alex,
my son.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
And the loss of your father was a big loss for me as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Lots of lessons in loss.
Yeah. So why don't you start by sharing some of the lessons you learned, unless you want to start off by talking a little bit about the loss,
Well, in your reading, it said, do you choose life or loss? And I think loss is a part of life, and there's lessons in all of it. When an immediate loss happens from whatever form, I think you're in shock. And it takes time to absorb that just really happened.
Yeah.
And there's so many stages. I think you need some distance to think about what the lessons are. Everybody has their own lessons. And you need to be really mindful if you want to learn those lessons. Yeah, it's a lot.
I think it's very easy to get lost in grief and allow yourself to stay stuck in certain headspaces, and it's not all about being positive or trying to stay positive, because not everything is positive.
Right.
and you're not supposed to always be happy. You feel a multitude of emotions, and that's just part of being human.
Right, we are multi-sensory beings in this
Yes.
human body, and we feel and experience so many different things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, let's just talk about Alex for a second here. We lost Alex very, very suddenly and very traumatically.
Right.
And it was actually the reason that I wanted to do this episode now is because one, I'm in town with my mom and I wanted to do this episode with her. But two, this is actually around the time that we lost Alex. So a lot comes up when the date of someone's passing comes up.
It's big triggers a lot of things.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that get triggered for you during this time of year?
Sure. Losing Alex is the biggest thing for me. And looking at pictures is very triggering, and it's so happy and so sad. Smells trigger me, which is interesting, or sounds. It's all kinds of things. I then think about, he's not suffering anymore, in my belief. And I have to remind myself of that because I slip into what life was like. And I remind myself, and this is a lesson, that what happened in the past isn't happening now. I believe there's no suffering now. And I'm learning myself not to suffer and choose life. That's a lesson. And it took a while to get here because the loss was so sudden and traumatic that it was shocking, like I had mentioned earlier. And the shock didn't wear off real fast. It's weird for me on the anniversaries to think, I do this really weird thing just before the anniversary. I say to myself, wow, and this year it was, 4 years ago today, Alex was still on the planet.
Yeah.
And then the next day he wasn't. And I think that's so bizarre that I do that, but that's one thing that I do. And then I have to tell myself, it's okay. This is where we're at. He's okay. I'm really okay. I'm just sad.
Yeah.
Sad about the things we're going to miss. I watch all you guys continue to grow up, and he's never going to be older than 25.
Yeah.
And that's very strange, especially him being a twin.
Yeah.
So
And my older brother, me being older than him.
Right.
That is weird. I also think that what I have felt after a lot of after death or after finding out about Alex is that it's almost like, and this is with Alex and Dad, it's almost like your life, and it feels like your life ends too.
I agree 100%. I think when you have these losses, the truth is you're not the same person.
Yeah.
You're different. That's okay, but it's a truth.
Yeah.
You are different. You don't come out without stuff. You just don't.
Yeah. And I think with especially losing someone permanently in terms of death is, it's very, like, a lot of people like to say that because you've been through this experience, you're stronger because of it. And I personally disagree with that, because I think that when you go through an extremely traumatic event, it actually sets you back in a lot of ways. Like, I feel like I've stayed more stuck in certain parts of my life and unable to move forward in certain parts of my life that I see my peers able to move forward without having as much of a setback. And I know I always preach, don't compare yourself to others. Everybody has different life experiences and different things that happen, but I just think that it doesn't really make you stronger to go through something traumatic. It actually sets you back emotionally and mentally, and it's something you just learn to live with. And people always say, oh, it will get easier, it will get easier. And the truth of it is it doesn't really get easier. When I think of never being able to see Alex grow up or have an adult relationship with my dad, it brings me back to the moment of feeling that loss, like when I first found out. That never goes away. You just learn how to manage it and live.
This is how I say it and explain to people. It does never go away. You learn to live around it. It's always there. It might be at the forefront of your mind, or it might be back a little bit. It might just be sitting in your heart. And you learn to live around it. It's sort of like strengthening a muscle or something. It's weird. I can kind of feel it when I talk about it to you. I found this year a little bit shocking and interesting, the anniversary. Unlike in the past, it felt softer for me, which really kind of surprised me and made me remind myself, that's okay. I still miss him as much as I always do. It didn't take away from that. It didn't make the loss okay. I didn't lay in my bed and cry all day like other times I could.
Yeah.
So that was interesting, but it's taken 4 years and a whole lot of personal work and growth. And that surprised me.
Yeah.
But back to what you said, I tell people you learn to live around it. That's how I describe it. Does it set me back? That's an interesting thing you brought up.
Yeah.
I don't think it really sets me back. I took that grief and held it and sat with it for 2 years before I could make any moves through it and forward into action. A lot of internal work, but outwardly what I found was I needed to help other people.
Yeah.
And I took this giant grief and thought, I can't be the only one. I can't find other people around me though. And I tried, because I think for me that helps to not feel alone. It's not just everybody who can understand. You have to walk in these shoes.
Right.
So I started a support group.
Yeah. Which has been a really
incredible
journey of helping other people heal who've been through
the loss of a child specifically in this group.
Yeah.
And when they say boy, I understand what you're saying. I can trust that. That's real.
Yeah.
That's real. Other people want to make you feel better, but different.
Yeah. And I think what I mean when I say feel set back in certain ways is in the back of my head, I'm constantly thinking, okay, what's going to happen next? If I don't if you don't answer a phone call, that sets me off.
I still have that actually.
Yeah.
So that I get too.
Yeah, following people's locations, your location to make sure
PTSD.
Yeah.
And you never know when the shoe's going to drop.
Exactly. So I just always have a lot of anxiety in the back of my head about certain things. And I think that comes from losing someone suddenly and traumatically. But I also don't want to take away, we've experienced sudden traumatic loss, but there's a ton of people who, experience loss, with someone who has gone through their entire life and is at an age where they're at the end of their life. And so I don't want to take away that pain from somebody who's dealing with that too, because it's
Do you mean the more natural order of things?
Yeah, the more natural order thing.
Sure.
Because that's just as hard as well. That's still grieving, and you can kind of talk a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, I want to say there's a grieving process for all losses. They don't all look alike, but there's definitely, it's valid. The grief is valid.
And there's no right or wrong way to grieve.
Right, and I don't believe any two people grieve exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I've been around a lot of people that are grieving, and it looks different on everybody. And interestingly, everybody has something to offer the whole, there is, and I've had this, loss of a marriage.
Yeah.
That's another grief.
Yeah.
Really, when you plan your life and you have a whole vision, and it doesn't happen for whatever reason, that may or may not be a traumatic, sudden anything. For me, nothing was sudden, but it's still shocking, like, oh my God, it's real, and I have to live with it.
Yeah, and changing what you know.
Right.
And what you're used to every day, and the person that you confide in and tell everything to.
Your person.
Yeah, your person, and then someone that knows you more than anybody because they spend the most time with you, and that in itself is a loss. And also, picturing what your future looks like with someone and not being able to have that future is also a loss. So it's another form of grief in a lot of ways, and learning how to deal with being on your own again,
it's like starting over.
Yeah, which is very similar, I think, to losing someone also permanently through death, because you are starting over as well, and that you're learning a new way to live, and that's the same thing when you go through a breakup. Let's rewind a little bit and go back to the natural order. And do you want to talk a little bit about some of what you're dealing with now?
Watching life change?
Yeah.
Sure. I'm experiencing some grief and anxiety about the loss of a loss that is coming. And I see my dad is changing, and he's 88 now, and I've had him my whole life. And I don't like to think about it, but I can't help it. Sometimes I think about, oh my gosh, what's life going to be like without him?
Yeah.
He's my safety net.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel the grief already starting.
Yeah.
I wish I didn't. I try to, and this is another lesson I learned in grief, is to stay in the moment. You can't control very much. And I personally don't want to live anxious all the time and miss out on things because I'm grieving, but I can't control it either.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm currently, like I said, dealing with the time in my life when I don't have a parent. That is life altering.
Yeah.
As you would know.
Yeah.
But I'm going to experience it in the natural order, quite the opposite of you.
Right. But just as hard. I think that
It's my version of losing my dad.
yeah, exactly. And he's still here, which is amazing, and we don't want to rush anything.
No,
obviously.
but it's made me, our other losses have made me super hypersensitive to time and how
Yeah.
quickly it travels.
Yeah.
So I am very mindful not to waste that time. I am grateful he's still here. So even my little anxiety about it, which I think is natural,
100%.
I also relish all the time that we have, because he's still my dad and he's still taking care of me like my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel blessed and lucky.
I also think that with dealing with grief and loss, it has, I say that it doesn't make you stronger, but I have learned a lot from these experiences.
Sure.
And something that I've learned is what my true priorities in life are. And I've talked about this a little bit on the podcast of, my priorities prior to sudden loss of my dad and my brother were only like career oriented and trying to focus all of my time and effort and energy into my career and what I was going to be doing with my life. And that has shifted so much because my priority now is my family and my friends and the people I love and just people in general over my career, because that stuff is not your job and your career and what you do in your life are never permanent and always can change and are not the things that they can shape you, but they don't shape you in the way that, your relationships and the people you love shape you. And to me, what I see as the point of life, and I've also talked a lot about this, is I don't really believe there is any specific point in life, but what I choose to believe while I'm here on earth and living is to just try to put in as much effort and time with the people I love, because you never know what's going to happen. And
they're a gift.
Yeah, they really are. And just making sure to make time for those things. Prioritize.
Yeah, I totally agree and have learned that same lesson, which is why I mentioned being so aware of the time with my family and the people close to me as well. We should try to find, I believe, as much joy while we're here as we can, and to be kind and loving and hold space for people who aren't able to do it for themselves.
Yeah.
I do think that we do gain some internal strength after loss, because just by nature of surviving,
Yeah.
that's a growth, that's a strength, and that counts. It's life. It's part of the human condition.
Yeah, and I do think that it's hard. It's very, very difficult to move forward after any sort of loss, whether it's death, whether it's a relationship or friendship. I think for me at least, it's very hard to let go and move on and keep living, but you don't have a choice.
You don't.
You have to keep living because there is no other choice.
And I believe it's our responsibility to choose to live.
Yeah.
Not to take away from how difficult it actually is. And
Right.
the investment of time and brain power, which in and of itself during a grieving time that's heavy, is so hard to do. I have learned about self-care also, by the way.
Yeah.
Because if I am not the best me, I'm not showing up the best for the people that are important, and they deserve the best of me.
Yeah.
So I learned to take care of myself, to show up that way so I don't waste time also.
Yeah. And I think it's important to hold space for the times that, you're going to be in the hardest moments of grief where you feel like you can't get out of bed or
Right.
you can't feed yourself or do, the most
Basic.
basic things that you need for yourself. I think that just allowing yourself the space to cry when you need to cry.
Absolutely.
Or allowing yourself to open up to somebody for help. It's not, I think something that I have struggled with a lot is opening up to the people closest to me about certain things I'm feeling because I feel like I'm a burden. But really, at the end of the day, you're not a burden, because when I think about it, if a friend comes to me and is not feeling good, my first thought is not, you're a burden. My first thought is, how can I help and be there to support? So I think it's important to trust the people around you and open up and not hold things to deal with on your own. Humans are not supposed to be alone.
Right.
We seek community and we seek to be around
comfort of other people.
Exactly.
So if you want to change the subject in a little direction, there's another thing I grieve.
Yes, please.
The state of the world.
Yeah.
It's so sad. There's so many sad things happening, and I personally am wired highly sensitive, so I absorb a lot of the sadness in the world, and I wish I could do more. I grieve for others.
Yeah.
And their pain, and I don't need to single out any one particular group of people or place on the planet. I think it is universal.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. And I grieve for others.
Yeah, and
big time.
And anybody suffering.
Suffering,
of course.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that no matter what situation you're in or the hand you're dealt in life, everybody deals with some form of grief.
Sure.
So it's something that everybody deals with. And I think that there's different phases. And I think when you're in it, it's hard to see past what's next. But that
requires time, I think.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And it's normal. It takes time to readjust to this new way of life. And you can feel a mix of emotions within 1 hour of time, less than an hour of time. I think that grief comes in waves. There can be moments of happiness, and that's normal and okay, and it's good to feel those things. And then there can be moments of deep, deep sadness and feeling like you don't want to go on, and that's also normal to feel those things.
All those things are valid. I've also experienced being happy and super sad at the same time, and that's weird.
Yeah.
It's a compartmentalized thing. And I'm kind of proud of myself for it, in that I'm seeing some joy also, even while being so deeply sad.
Yeah.
The sad seems to stay more steady. But I'm working on the joy part, and I'm happy to say that you can have that also. It doesn't just boom automatically happen, though.
Yeah.
I'm bouncing around, but I want to validate pet loss as well.
Yeah.
That's like a family member, so it goes back to what we talked about, family. But when you have a companion like that can be a big loss. And it changes your whole environment when they're not there.
Yeah. I also think friend breakups are a big thing. I've been through a couple major friend breakups that I truly grieved. Like, it was a very big loss, but also a normal part of life, and things are always changing and moving, and you can always meet new people and make new friends, and it's not always easy for everybody to do that, but the point is that it's possible to move on. And I think that it's really, really important to allow yourself to let go, and that doesn't mean not remember or not
acceptance.
Yeah.
And it's a toughie.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away from the experience you had and what you get to walk away with.
And I think there's phases of grief.
Sure.
I think there's the shock phase and
anger sometimes.
Yeah.
And sad
and
denial,
yeah. And finally acceptance, yeah. And the loss doesn't get easier, but the getting used to and living a new sort of life and adjusting to that gets easier.
I think acceptance is the perfect word.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen automatically. You have to work towards it or wait towards it and just live through it. And maybe that's why this year, our anniversary for Alex felt softer. Maybe I'm accepting it more.
Yeah.
I don't like it. It's very bizarre to me to truly accept that he's not here physically, because I know he's near me all the time,
Yeah.
not in the physical. I feel like I've lost him physically, but not forever.
Yeah.
And not like he's totally not part of my life.
Yeah.
I still think about him every day. And
Of course. I also think that something that is not talked about enough is as time passes, that can be very difficult because the more time passes, you who experience the loss doesn't move on from it right away, but the people around you keep living their lives.
They do.
And they're, the people around you start not checking in as much and start
they go back to their own lives.
their normal lives. And I think that's a very, very difficult part of loss and grief. And I think the first year especially is one of the hardest because that marking is a whole year without that person, and it's still shocking at that point for it to be.
I found year 2 harder than year 1 because year 2 it was more permanent to me. That's where it started. I had to start accepting that it was permanent, not easy.
Yeah.
But reality.
Yeah. But I do think that my biggest takeaway and my biggest advice is to lean on the people you trust and love the most.
I agree.
And to try and do what feels good for you, whether it's a simple thing, whether it's vegging out on the couch and watching a bunch of TV.
And don't judge yourself.
Yeah, I agree.
Don't judge yourself because there are no rules. There is no guidebook. And it's all valid, long as you are not hurting yourself or others.
Yeah, and one day, believe it or not, you will wake up and you'll be like, whoa, I feel okay today.
Yeah.
And that is...
Sometimes that's a little weird to get used to.
Yeah.
And that's all right also.
Yeah.
We're just pointing out, boy, all the stages that really go. And they don't go in an order. They're circular.
Yeah.
And they can come and go when you least expect it.
They're all... everything about grief comes in waves.
Yeah.
You can... Like I said earlier, you can feel horrible one second and okay the next second, and all of that is normal. Everybody grieves differently, like you said, and it's just about trying to be nice to yourself and doing what feels good to you and leaning on the people you love the most.
Yeah.
And don't waste time. I think that's my biggest thing. I think we, as people, we can hold grudges. And
I was just going to say, and don't be petty.
Yeah.
That's a waste of time.
Yeah. There's no... I think for me, with my dad, we didn't get along for certain reasons that I'm not going to specify here, but our relationship was very up and down, and one of my biggest regrets is not letting certain things go easier and trying to mend our relationship more so that I would have had more time with him. And I'm not saying that I don't know what everybody's specific situations are in their relationships, and maybe, keeping that boundary is healthier and better for you. And I'm not saying don't keep that. You should do, again, what's ever best for you. But if it is something that you can move beyond and this person is important to you, I think it's really important to let that type of stuff go, because, again, you never know what's going to happen. And it is one of my biggest regrets that I now have to live with for the rest of my life. So
your experience has taught me, you taught me, don't waste time. You're the one that hit that home for me.
mm-hmm.
And I took it to heart, and I do my very best. I still get caught in my own grief, and sometimes that makes me go dark, meaning I pull into myself and I don't reach out like I should. I end up wasting time that way, and I'm not happy with myself, but I don't know how to control it. It is what it is.
We're all humans. We all make mistakes, and you can get stuck in certain things,
Right.
and that's also a normal.
But I come out going, okay, get back to it.
Yeah.
We got good stuff around here. Enjoy it while it's here. Don't let it slip away. And again, thank you. Thank you. What I heard you whenever the time I heard you, it really went to my core and taught me a giant lesson. Pulled me out of myself actually a little bit.
Yeah. It's an unfortunate way to learn how to prioritize, but really, like, at the end of the day, even when it comes to a work thing, if there is a family thing that comes up, I will put that before anything. And it can be scary doing that, especially when you're trying to grow and learn and move up in certain areas in your life.
I have to point out that we're very, very fortunate with the family we are in, because our family is very supportive. I recognize that that's not the case for everybody. And if you don't have family to lean on, I hope you find a friend or a support group or something, because it's so much better not to be alone.
Yeah. And
you don't have to be alone.
You don't have to be alone. Yeah. And it's very easy to isolate in times of grief and in times of struggling. And I've said this in past episodes, but I am an outlet for anybody who wants to reach out. I can't promise that I'll be able to solve all your problems, but I am definitely here to listen and support and not judge. So
yeah.
With that said, is there anything else that we didn't hit on that we'd like to hit on before I wrap up the app?
Oh, it's such a big topic with so many layers and faceted.
I know.
That, I don't know. I think we touched on a lot of good things.
Yeah.
And if any questions come through, we will get back to you.
Yeah, and this can be an ongoing conversation.
Definitely.
Maybe we will come on again at some point if this is a topic that resonates with whoever is watching and listening. With that said, I will wrap up the episode. Please follow me. Rate, like, subscribe. You can follow me on my personal Instagram, which is Kyla_Milberger. You can follow me on the podcast Instagram, which is it's the _better_together_podcast. And you can write in questions, comments, your own stories, at thebettertogetherpod@gmail.com, and anything that I did not mention or forgot to mention, or if I said something wrong, everything will be linked below in the description. And I want to thank you so much for coming on. I love having you.
I want to thank you for having me, and this is special.
Yes.
Thank you. I hope we gave somebody some comfort.
Yes. And I will see you next Sunday.
Bye. Everybody.